Okay, here I go, Heather. Three, two, one.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for the Mastering LEED V4 Materials and Resources Credits for Product Manufacturers webinar. Today we're going to talk about the third credit in the Building Optimization and Disclosure series of the LEED V4 rating system, Material Ingredients. My name is Heather Gatineau, and I'm the Director of Sustainable Building and Construction at ThinkStep. I'm also joined today by one of our ThinkStep experts, John Jewell, who's going to take you through the content of the credit, and Rick Crawford with GreenWizard, our media partner in delivering this webinar series. And Rick is going to tell you a little bit more about the GreenWizard offerings as well at the end of the credit overview. We'll then have time for questions and answers. As many of you know, we like to do these webinar series in 30-minute chunks. We know everybody's time is valuable, and we want to deliver as much information to you and the most valuable content we can in the shortest amount of time, so you can go ahead and get on with your day. These webinars are being recorded, so you will have access to them after the entire series is through. If you have questions, feel free to type them as you go in the questions section, and we'll get to them at the end. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. First, I just want to set the scene. Again, as many of you know, USGBC, they're changing the way that materials are rewarded, if you will, within the LEED rating system. So this comes with a shift from LEED 2009 to LEED V4. And the materials and resources section is basically being overhauled. So whereas before we had things that were, or credits that were focusing on things like recycled content and regionality, we now have credits that are looking at products through a more holistic lens and focusing on disciplines like life cycle assessment and environmental product declarations, focusing on the sourcing of raw materials and supply chain sustainability of products, and also focusing on the substance and then associated hazard and optimization from a health perspective of those products as well. So today we're focusing on that third aspect. USGBC did announce the extension of LEED 2009, but that gives us a little bit more time to prepare for LEED V4. And you know, we really believe that now is the time to take action because we have had this extended time period. It's really giving manufacturers the time that they need to dig into these credits and prepare for the market change that's about to hit. So go to the next slide, please. I also wanted to let everybody know that ThinkStep is formerly known as PE International. I think that this news is pretty widely known by now, but just in case you haven't heard yet, we did rebrand back in March. So if you're hearing ThinkStep and you're thinking PE International, then that's good. It's the same company, fresh new brand. Next slide, please. Now, just a little bit about ThinkStep. We work across the built environment value chain. So this allows us to gain pretty strong insight into the demand drivers in the industry and also into the activities and actions of those that are driving specification and procurement of products. Because we do a lot of work with building owners, we do a lot of work with the architecture and engineering community and the contracting community, we're able to help our clients and help those manufacturers that are supplying products throughout this value chain better understand what their target audience and what their purchasers are looking for. Next slide, please. And some of you also may be familiar. We did launch a new platform this year as well, and this platform is combining our software, data, and services together into one common technology interface. So we are most widely known for our GABI lifecycle assessment software and services, but we also do have a suite of software and services that range from product compliance and lifecycle assessment through to sustainability management and reporting, corporate sustainability reporting, supplier engagement, and environmental health and safety. So ThinkStep is definitely much more than the LCA company, although that is our core heritage. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to John Jewell. As I said before, if you have questions, please feel free to type them into the question box. We'll try to answer as many as we can on the webinar, and those that we don't get to, we'll be sure to get back to you via email. John, take it away.
Thanks, Heather. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about the credit intent and sort of what's behind it, what the credit's trying to achieve, and then we'll go into the details. So next slide, please. So we're talking today about the credit related to material ingredients. This credit is intended to encourage the use of products and materials which have had a chemical inventory done. The U.S. Green Building Council wants you to start with an inventory, figure out what's in your product, even if it might include hazards, and then improve the product's inventory for additional points. So we'll start by taking stock of what's in our products, and then those raw material manufacturers who have reduced hazards or improved impacts can achieve additional points. Next slide, please. I want to set a couple of terms and definitions out for everyone in case you're not familiar with these. The first item is fairly common, especially in the manufacturing community. CAS numbers, or sometimes known as CAS-RN numbers, are unique identifiers associated with every chemical described somewhere in scientific literature. So many materials and chemicals have been classified with a CAS number, but not everything. Often you would find these on a safety data sheet, or as previously known as a material safety data sheet, an MSDS. But those CAS numbers, those unique identifiers, are used in some of the pathways to achieve this LEED credit, so I just wanted to touch on those. Another item that is maybe not familiar to everyone is green screen. This is a method which evaluates the potential chemical hazards associated, especially for identifying chemicals of concern. And the green screen assessment system is used in one of the pathways to achieve this credit. So I want to make sure everyone knows what that is. The next item is the health product declaration. HPD has created a couple of new terms that they use in their HPD rating system, which I'll get into in a minute. These are intentional ingredients, which are ingredients you put in the product on purpose. Residual ingredients are anything that might be in your product, such as a trace monomer, a catalyst, something after manufacturing happens. The last thing I wanted to mention was REACH, which is a European regulation that stands for Regulation, Evaluation, Authorization, and Restriction of Chemicals. It's basically a list of chemicals which have potential hazards. So next slide. I'm going to go through the different pathways to achieve the credit. Next slide. So there are three different options for achieving this material ingredients credit. You can do material ingredient reporting, which is an inventory according to green screen. You can do ingredient optimization, so you can improve or reduce the risk associated with your product. And then there's a third option for supply chain optimization. Next slide, please. This first option, material ingredient reporting, this is the inventory, and the credit language asks that you use at least 20 different permanently installed products from at least 5 different manufacturers that use any of the following programs, green screen, HPD, or cradle to cradle, to demonstrate the chemical inventory of a product to at least 0.1%. So when we're looking into ways of achieving these inventories, the first pathway would be through a green screen inventory. This manufacturer inventory would take the ingredients in your product, and by ingredient, you would look at the CAS number, and any materials which have shown up by at least 0.1% in the material must be identified whether they have a green screen score or not, according to the standard version 1.2. And there are different benchmark levels of a green screen that you might receive. It's ranging from avoid as a benchmark 1 down to prefer, which is a safer chemical. And one other thing I wanted to note was that the identity of proprietary materials can be hidden in this inventory as long as their role, their amount, and what green screen benchmark they achieved is reported. So it's not to say that you have to tell everything that's in your product, even trade secrets. You just have to say what green screen benchmarks are associated with all of those materials. So this inventory that it uses the green screen approach must have either the green screen list translator is one of the ways you can do this inventory. It's sort of a lighter version, and the green screen list translator, it basically takes those chemicals, checks them against those hazard lists, and then it reports the benchmarks 1 through 4 as were described before. The full green screen assessment's a little bit deeper, and that actually includes some research, which takes the potential hazards forward through different environmental pathways to see what sort of endpoints might actually be achieved. Another pathway to get this, next slide please. This option 1 would be by conducting a health product declaration. An HPD is a fairly new inventory tool. The tool has been around for over a year, and they've recently released an updated standard. Currently, U.S. Green Building Council recognizes recognizes HPD version 1.0. So we'll probably have a few questions about what's coming with version 2, but for now, the LEED pathway is through V1, and there will likely be a change later down the line. In terms of what's included in an HPD, similar to that material inventory you saw before, there's a list of all the materials in your product. In this case, you're required to list your intentional ingredients down to 100%, 100.0%, everything that you meant to put in the product. Now, the 0.1% threshold is where you can start reporting residual ingredients. And so those must be disclosed to 0.1% or more detail. The HPD system automatically cross-references those ingredients according to a number of hazard lists. And then at the end, you would choose whether or not you want to disclose those known hazards, which would qualify for LEED credit, or if you wanted to create an HPD and not apply for LEED points, you could choose not to fully disclose those known hazards. In either case, proprietary materials can be hidden as long as their hazards are identified, similar to the material inventory. One last thing to mention on HPDs is that architects have been sending out letters to manufacturers. They want the transparency associated with material disclosure, and they want HPDs. So we've seen that this is a great place to start the conversation. It's a great place to evaluate the potential hazards in a product. But there are challenges with the HPD system, such as many chemicals and materials don't have CAS numbers. Intentional ingredients that you put into your product often undergo a chemical or physical change during manufacturing. They may no longer exist in the final product. And the HPDs don't consider risk or exposure to a chemical only hazard. That said, some of these issues are being worked through, and architects are asking for them, so they're here to stay. The other pathway for achieving this option 1 around material ingredient reporting is another system for evaluating hazard called cradle to cradle, sometimes called C2C. Cradle to cradle is a little bit broader in its scope. It's a multi-attribute certification that considers not only material health, but also material reutilization or recycling potential, renewable energy use, water stewardship, and social fairness. The language in LEED requires that the product must achieve a cradle-to-cradle basic level per their second version, or a bronze level in cradle-to-cradle version 3. One of the pieces with C2C is that there is an independent organization which validates these product assessments. And the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute is a separate organization that has replaced Cradle to Cradle as the external verifier. So there's a bit of separation in that system. The other piece with this external validation is that certification to Cradle requires a commitment to continuous improvement. So just because you get it once, you can't walk away. They're going to come back and check and validate that you're improving over time. So I just talked through 3 pathways to achieve the first option in this credit. The next slide is about optimization. So with option 2 in the credit, you have already done an inventory of your product's ingredients. Now, if you can document that their material ingredient optimization using one of these paths for at least 25, that there's an improvement for at least 25% of the value of the permanently installed products in the building. So in other words, we're looking for improvements to the inventory. This can be shown through having an inventory without any benchmark 1 hazards. So that's that first pathway with a green screen assessment. If you don't have any benchmark 1 hazards and you've done the inventory of chemical ingredients down to 100 parts per million or 0.01%, then you can achieve this credit. There's a slight nuance with the valuation of products. Because we're looking for 25% of the cost of the building, in this case, the product's valued at 100% of their cost, so sort of a 1-to-1 if you've done an assessment with the green screen list translator, or if you got cradle to cradle version 2 gold or silver, and you don't have any REACH substances. So if there were in an international project done outside the US, no REACH substances of very high concern would be allowed. Now, there are ways that you could get products that achieve more than 100% of their cost, so you could get sort of a multiplier into effect. If you have a full green screen assessment, you went beyond just the list translator, or if you achieved cradle to cradle platinum in version 2, or gold or platinum in version 3, then your product would be valued at 150% of its cost in the calculation above, so trying to get that 25% of the entire building. So the last piece that I wanted to show was this third option for supply chain optimization. In this case, they're trying to use building products for at least 25% by cost of the total value of permanently installed products that are sourced from product manufacturers who either have who both have validated safety, health, hazard, and risk programs, as well as those manufacturers who have verification of what happens in their supply chain. So there's a little bit of ambiguity in this credit language. There's not a ton of guidance on how to achieve this credit, but there is a U.S. Green Building Council working group to address this. It's still being defined, and the guidance provided basically says check the U.S. Green Building Council websites for updates on how to achieve compliance. We're essentially looking to identify, optimize, and communicate those effects of chemicals throughout the value chain. And so as more interpretation becomes available on how to achieve this credit, we'll pass that along as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Rick, and I'll be available for questions later.
All right, thanks for the introduction there. I'm going to run through these slides relatively quickly so that we can get to your questions after the call. So GreenWizard is the building product management solution, and we provide a variety of collaboration tools to help the design and construction community create greater workflow efficiencies so that they can maximize profits. They can come to GreenWizard to simply search, evaluate, compare materials. They can collaborate firm-wide by building their firm's private digital library, and can invite in the entire project team, even those outside of their organization, for enhanced project team collaboration, and take advantage of our tools like our product trackers and especially our LEED V4 MR and EQ trackers. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, they can search, evaluate, and compare materials to GreenWizard so that they can make the most informed and responsible building product choices possible. One of the challenges that our design and construction customers face is the amount of time spent on researching materials and where to find information related to transparency in LEED version 4. So we make it very easy for them to find what they're looking for by making transparency information available, accessible, and in a central location. Next slide, please. In fact, we're the only software solution on the market that has the rules for LEED version 4 already built into our search page, and tools that automatically track the material and calculate the LEED credit points. In short, we take much of the headache associated with the finding, evaluating, comparing, selecting, and tracking materials for LEED V4 projects. Next slide, please. GreenWizard's integrated marketing program provides building product manufacturers with an ROI and helps our customers make the business case for transparency. We are the only marketing, or one of the only marketing platforms that allows manufacturers to differentiate themselves by way of responsible product attributes by calling them out in their banner ads. We provide a platform that enables our integrated marketing customers to enhance their brand equity and customer loyalty through ads and education and awareness opportunities. And through our analytics, we're able to provide our integrated marketing customers with a return on marketing investment, and also insights that can drive their responsible certifications, labels, and declaration strategy. Next slide, please. So the opportunity at GreenWizard is that there are currently only 27% of building product manufacturers have responsible product certifications, labels, and declarations listed on our site, but they're being selected for projects and libraries better than 50% of the time. Next slide, please. In fact, we just released our Q3 2015 Insight Report, and 91% of the products selected for projects included these responsible product attributes. Next slide, please. So in summary, GreenWizard helps design and construction professionals save time and ultimately money through our collaboration tools, and we help building product manufacturers make the business case for transparency. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So I'll take a couple of questions. We've got a few minutes remaining. Make sure if you have a question, please type it into the window here. The first question we got was related to the Declare label. This is coming through the Living Building Challenge. Is the Declare label going to be a USGBC approved program for identifying material ingredients? Heather, do you want to take this one?
Sure, I can take this one. So I'm also on the USGBC's Materials and Resources Technical Advisory Group. So we're a group of volunteers that help steer the direction of the Materials and Resources credits and help answer questions like this as they arise. We are looking at developing a criteria system for determining what alternative approved programs would look like, or what that framework would look like within the LEED rating system, particularly as it focuses on materials and resources credits. Once that alternative program framework is approved, we will then start to look at some of these alternative programs like Declare to see if they fit within those frameworks. So as of now, Declare is not an approved program, but it's definitely one that we are exploring and we're looking into. And once this criteria is approved, we'll definitely have much clearer guidance and information there. And we'll be happy to share that with you as we get a little bit more clarity.
So I got another question here about the regional materials credit and how does that apply to these? So as some of you may remember, the old LEED system had a credit for materials sourced within 500 miles. That's gone away in LEED version 4. But it's been replaced by a doubling factor. So any products that have been extracted, manufactured, and purchased within 100 miles of the project site would qualify for twice their benefit in any of these pathways that I described today, as well as the pathways for an EPD or any of the supply chain optimization, etc. So the 500 miles is gone. The 100-mile doubling factor is now the transportation rule.
And for those of you who may not have been on the previous webinar we did about the raw materials credit, so that's kind of the middle credit in the Building Optimization and Disclosure Series, that 100-mile criteria component of the credit sits within that middle credit. So if you weren't able to make that webinar, we'll be sending out recordings of that webinar in the slide deck at the end of this series, and you can listen to that for reference.
So the last couple of very quick questions were, will you make the recording available? Heather just answered that one. There was another question about whether or not low-emitting materials are going to fit into these webinars. The answer is no, these are going to focus on material disclosure and on the MR credits associated with the building product manufacturers. So we're not going to get into all the aspects of LEED v4, but